Hello again. We're live back here at stage number 1 together with Jutta Jerlich. It's talk about why return on failure, how to turn a mistake into a resource. The stage is yours, Jutta.
Thank you very much. I'm here today to talk about why failure is the most underestimated resource, just as you already started to say. And I brought a couple of numbers with me that demonstrate this very big potential that we are not using when we are not talking about failure. And as you can see, this is very, very difficult to read. So I would like to start again, because this is, of course, not the right way to start any kind of presentation or pitch. I would like to pick out 5 numbers out of these many that I just had flying in, so that we can let it sink into us in this high potential that we are not tapping into. What are these numbers standing for? It's on the one hand IT projects, which probably many of you are quite familiar with, partnerships that fail, new products that never make it to the market, new hires, or startups that disappear in the first 18 months. Who is talking to you? My name is Jutta Jerlich, and I'm all about collaboration and co-creation. I design experiences, develop strategies, and foster transformation in teams, organizations, working with the individuals, of course. I've spent the last 25 years developing the competence to stay away from failure, these couple of steps as a distance, to be able to look at it, turn it around, and turn it as long and as often as it is needed to find that positive side in it. Most of all, when you talk about failure, it's though about the emotions that hit you, the emotions that make us blind, the emotions that we need to overcome to be able to look at what's happening in the moment, and to look at what we can do to improve, to learn from it, to make it better in the end. Because of course, it's not about celebrating failure as such. We would like to learn how to avoid it the next time around. My experience is coming from working with 272 teams of young engineers. I teach, for example, at the Vienna University of Technology, who are spending 1 semester in building up their own ideas. Or more than 80 CEOs that I worked with in the format of leadership exchange forums, or dozens of hackathons that I have initiated or organized with educational partners in many, many countries or cities, or across several cities, and the uncountable hours of working with engineers as a mentor. So it's just a fact that we have to accept mistakes, problems, shit happens, and we have to deal with it. And it's really, really important to let it sink into you that speaking about failure, these open conversations, are the key for building a culture that is able to foster change. And this is something that we need more and more in our societies. I don't know if some of you have already heard about it, but this is the Make Failure Public movement. It's the global Fvckup Nights network, which is about 300 cities all around the globe in 86 countries currently that organize so-called Fvckup Nights. If you take an abbreviation, we call them fun evenings. And it's an evening format where 3 to 4 speakers have 7 to 10 minutes to talk about a story of failure that they have experienced and what they have learned from it. It's quite difficult, you can imagine, to package something that you felt, where you were doing wrong, that you call a failure, into 7 to 10 minutes. So we extensively work with the speakers on our evenings, and maybe now you want to know who are those speakers that have the courage to share their stories on stage. One of them is entrepreneurs who have tried something new, for example, but it's also leaders who are let go and who have lost their jobs, or individuals who are just sharing a story out of their life where they would say that they've been surprised by life. So we have a very diverse set of stories that we share in the meantime, 27 editions in the last 4 years. I deeply believe in walking the talk. So I've been myself speaker at 3 different Fvckup nights, on my own once, of course, to try this out. And I opened the very first one that was founded in Freiburg. And this picture is coming from an evening at the Fvckup nights in Dornbirn in Vorarlberg, where I spoke in front of 300 participants. So I'm thinking back to this evening. It was really exciting and not that easy to talk about a very personal story in front of so many people. Today I've brought you a methodology that I use when I work with teams and organizations to recognize failure as a resource. It's called the failure value cycle, and it consists of 7 stages that can be put into 3 phases: the before, the during, and after phase. And it's a really useful tool to be able to kind of rank how your organization is doing, or how you yourself are doing in those different stages. The failure value cycle has been developed by John Danner and Mark Coppersmith, based on hundreds and hundreds of interviews with leaders in organizations. And I've decided to bring you a question for each one of those stages, so that you can get a little insight into what it is about, and maybe can relate this to the environment and context you're working in. So the first stage is called respect. And the question is, are people encouraged and recognized or rewarded when they point out potential difficulties? As the name of the stage says, respect is about that attitude, that mindsets that you have to be able to identify a potential difficulty that's coming your way. So it should actually be something good if people are pointing this out, so that something can happen with those potential difficulties that come your way. This is leading us to the next stage, which is called rehearse. And the question here is there a clear process for identifying and classifying different types of mistakes and the different responses required, of course? Starting with the respect, we are coming to rehearse, meaning that we will be able to find those different errors and mistakes that lead to the problems and issues, to the bigger ones coming along, right? So we are trying to capture or catch the small issues that lead to the bigger catastrophes later on. The next stage is recognize. And the question here is, when was the last time you were surprised by an error that you should have recognized already. Now you can start to feel what is the benefit of these 3 stages beforehand, where the main goal basically is to know the set of errors that could come our way and be able to recognize them based on the characteristics that you already know, and then to be able to know what to do if they actually happen. This is the 4th stage. This is the during stage, where you have to basically respond. You have to react to it. And here the question is, how clearly, convincingly, and calmly do we communicate with affective interest groups in such a situation? Now, how do you respond is now coming back to what I've mentioned beforehand. It's about being able to put the emotions that hit us when something really happens that we have not expected. Remember, if we are very good in what we are doing, we will be able to recognize the mistakes before they happen. Now, this 4th stage is something has happened that we have not recognized, and we are in an error situation we don't know what to do about. So here the main focus is on being able to put your emotions on the side. It doesn't mean ignoring the emotions, but we have to find a way of dealing with them to be able to clearly and calmly work with the people who are affected by the mistake. In the next stage, we are entering now the after phase. And the first one is called reflect. Here we are, of course, talking about how to analyze now what has happened. And I brought 2 questions here. How open, honest, and extensive are your ex-post analysis? And are our employees or are your team members trained for a full analysis and the emotional processing of that is happening during that time? Are we able to dive into this reflection phase in a way that allows us to actually capture what it is we need to learn? Stage number 6 is called Rebound. That's now where the table turns. After we have learned, hopefully, what we needed to learn, we need to find our energies again. We need to become positive, and we need to recharge, basically, to get back on the saddle, right? So the question here is, are members of the teams that were involved in the failure actually continuing on their assignments? I mean, these are the people who have learned something really big, most probably. And if you think back on, maybe many situations that may now come back flashing in front of your mind, usually those people are not on the project anymore. So there's a huge potential here to integrate that learning that is in the minds of people that were part of that failure into the organization. And the last stage, stage number 7, is called Remember. A very tricky question maybe. Can we remember? Can we name individuals or teams whose careers have benefited because of their involvement in known failure situations? If you want to reword it, can we name individuals or teams who have not been affected by their involvement in failure situations? So this is the completion of the circle, and unfortunately, I have to give you the bad news that even though we have gone now together through these 7 stages, it doesn't mean that we are done, that we have learned everything we needed to learn now and we are set and immune against failure. Unfortunately, it's a continuous transformation, a continuous cycle that is going on, and we have to keep on revisiting these stages in a loop. This is what I use when I work with teams or organizations in this level, really helping us to dissect that huge topic of failure into areas that we can relate to, and for the most part also that we can relate to the certain processes and organizational frameworks we're in. So I'd like to make the bridge to the session that was there before, and it was, what stuck in my mind there was about transparency. This is very, very much related to my topic of failure here, and it's hugely important to be able to not hide information in any sort of form, so that we can learn together as an organization. This is really my mission, and I'm very much enjoying to making the need to speak about failure public. I'm holding workshops in different formats and different countries, and I'm working with young engineering students, with teams that develop their ideas. Very much enjoyable and also challenging at the same time is, of course, the one-on-one mentoring that I do. So thank you very much for listening. I'm very happy to connect to you, and I'm also planning to set up a session in Hopin to maybe discuss this with you further.
All right.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Ready for questions.
All right. Thanks a lot for presenting. It was actually really insightful. I love the principle about using fuck-ups actually and turn them into something valuable for my own life and for the life of others. Really like it. So now is the time to put questions in the chat. If there aren't any, I have maybe one question. I mean, to you, Jutta, from your experience, if you could categorize all the fuck-ups that you have seen, what is the one fuck-up that happens the most? Or the most, the source of fuck-up that happens the most in your experience?
Well, there's actually, we have done some analysis about the, with the stories, especially with the fuck-up night speakers, and the answer we most often get is about communication. It's like, well, we have not communicated enough, but that's really an easier one, right? Because I mean, it's like, it's always about something that we have not spoken about with someone else. I would say the syndrome, you could say, is like the Superman syndrome or Superwoman syndrome. If you are, falling in love with your idea and you are just, not open enough anymore to see what kind of adaptations would be needed. That's definitely one category. And lately, I've been looking a lot into, let's say, system fuck-ups. Many of the stories are in a way where, if you analyze it afterwards, you find out that actually there was no chance for you to win, because you were part of a framework or, also an economic system where you had no chance actually, but because you were really in love with what you do, you cared for the people that were involved, and you were trying to make something happen. You could not see that. And these are the most interesting questions, or the most interesting stories and the questions from our audience when we have fuck-up nights to really get into, where in the end we are coming to the conclusion, well, we would really have to work closely together to change the system as such.
All right, interesting. And unfortunately, the time is short. I think we have time for one more question. Matthias asked if you can give some insights on your view of employees' performance assessments versus failures. I think you mentioned it before about this Superman syndrome, right?
Yes, actually, I think performance assessments are a system failure because if you have a contract where you actually maybe even bound to be successful and to be perfect all the time, how will you be able to talk about failure, right? I mean, you're not shooting yourself in the foot. So I think the key here is that the company would really need to rethink how you can create frameworks that allow a culture to grow where everybody is able to talk about failure and hopefully before they happen, right? So it's referring back to the phase where we can recognize them before they happen.
Sure, that would always be a good thing, but yeah, not a thing of reality,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, there is always, it's depending on what industry and what department and what tasks you are working on, you will have different kind of failures, right? And there will be different ways of how to handle them. And yeah, there needs just to be more detailed analysis, to give an answer to this point. That there's actually unfortunately, no broad answer to it. But that's life, yeah, like you said.
True, true. Very interesting. So unfortunately, we don't have any more time, but Jutta, I have to say thanks for being here and for presenting. It was really interesting. Next up is Andy Carvel with the subject about mobile app retention. So stay tuned. So we'll be live in about 5 minutes. So see you later.